And we're live with Thekla Hutyrova
Hello.
doing an Action Talks live episode. A long time ago, I interviewed Thekla. It's been almost a year actually since we recorded
Has
the
it
interview.
really?
Yeah,
Oh my gosh, it feels like very recently. That's crazy.
yeah, that was ancient history. Things were very different back then. Um,
True.
it was
Very true.
we could talk about certain things back then that we're not to talk about now. But we do have a lot that we can discuss regarding your indie career, what you've been doing there. Um, I'm excited to talk about your motion capture work. And then hopefully talk conspiracy theories and fun stuff too that's really divisive and is going to
Oh, of course.
get people to
Yeah, we need
unsubscribe very quickly.
those are always good. I think the chicken came first for the record,
We'll
not
have
the
to
egg.
see. Let's get Eddie Bravo on and see what he says.
Let's get a poll going.
Yeah. Um, so before what we did, the last live stream had a little mishap with Johnny Young Bosch. Not because of him, but because I decided that I would stream the clips directly to the live stream, thinking that YouTube would just allow this, and then I would just go in and edit them later. Turned out that got me a warning, and I could have a copyright strike if I do it again.
Oh
So
no.
I don't think I'm going to do that this time.
Wait,
Instead,
but did you do links from YouTube?
yeah, I mean, I
Like,
showed the clips from YouTube. Yes.
yeah, I feel like if it's already on YouTube, I don't see why YouTube would have an issue with it. Whatever, YouTube.
Yeah,
Okay.
whatever YouTube. It's
That's
their
wild.
platform. I gotta play by their rules. So
Yeah, it makes sense, but like interesting.
I mean, maybe down the line, the more we do this, the more that they'll find wrong with just this format. But we'll go with this for now.
Yeah.
Maybe we'll say something terrible that they want to shut us down for. Then we don't know. But we
Love YouTube.
yeah
Thank
yeah
you for letting us be
we
here.
love you all, and we love getting free money. It's great. And the free platform is awesome because
Yeah.
20 years ago, nothing like this existed.
That's
You
crazy.
know,
And you know, like
oh,
you firsthand
yeah,
know,
yeah.
which
I
is
went
amazing.
through. I went through the the early days of trying to find website hosting and or video hosting. And back then, in like 2001, 2002, you could get 2 megabytes. I remember in 2001 or maybe 2000, you could get 2 megabytes, which was a lot. 2 megabytes. 2 megabytes was about 4 minutes of video at about, if I can even, it's about that big. It was about like that big. And
That's
I
wild.
think I did 160 by 120 resolution. Seriously, it was so small you could barely see anything. And you get 2 megabytes, and then what you would do is you would sign up for 50 of those accounts, and you just put one video on each one. It was a huge pain. And then they didn't allow videos anymore because people were putting, adult content, obviously, on these sites.
Because why wouldn't you
Of
immediately
course.
just
Yeah.
ruin something?
And then after that, they did 20 megabytes, and then My 5 Minutes came around, and then MySpace came around and allowed videos. And then once YouTube was there, it was a 10-minute limit. And then once that limit was gone, it was like all bets were off. So
Yeah, it's amazing. It's actually the one that stayed around the longest and has just remained like this solid thing. Like, yeah, anyway, hopefully YouTube likes us more for this, but it is pretty cool.
when did you start putting videos out there?
I think I made a tricking sampler in like 2009 or 8 or something like that. Like it was definitely like there was YouTube, like tricking samplers were definitely a thing. I watched like Bylang videos a lot before I even remotely tried anything. I think the first like Loop Kicks gathering I went to in San Jose was in like 2009, I think. So around that time I got like really into the all of that. And I think I was also taking like a media class in high school where we had like camcorders and like ran around the school and like tried to learn like stuff about filming things. Actually, I'm so upset because we made a like a lightsaber video and actually edited the effects and stuff. Like it must have been terrible. But in 2010, we made one like with my two friends from martial arts, and I really wish I had that somewhere because I'm so curious.
Oh man, you gotta find that.
I've tried it.
You're
Literally,
wasting
it's
your
just
time on
gone.
this live stream. You could be finding that for us right now.
Hey, that's indie.
Yeah, we could talk about that. Phantoms
um,
are okay, right?
yeah, but I'm like, one of my big regrets in life, you know.
Did you? I mean, were you behind the camera on these, or were you actually doing the production side and coming up with ideas for films back then as well?
I mean, films is very high, high
Well,
phrasing, but I think I was, you know, performing and coordinating and directing. I don't know. I mean, obviously for samplers, I was in them a lot of times. I was also like setting up my. Was it a camera or a phone? I guess either because we had like razors and
you
stuff
guys
in
didn't
high
have
school.
phones back
So we
then.
had
It was like,
we
yeah,
had we had flip
flip phones.
phones.
Yeah.
Yeah, like the razor was super cool. The like hot pink and black ones. It was like this like thin little flip phone thing. Um,
I was a
yeah,
Nokia
but
guy.
Nokia was so
I
cool.
was a Nokia guy.
I had one in Europe because we traveled to Europe a lot to visit my family and stuff. So we had like phones that were just specifically for there. So we put like a rechargeable SIM card in it or whatever. But it was like a Nokia, like regular, like the phone, and then it opened to like a full QWERTY keyboard, and then the screen was in the middle. It was like to this day, I think that's the coolest thing.
Yeah. Yeah. It was. I didn't have anything that cool. I had a little brick because
There,
I worked in
it's like
forklifting and I would climb the
oh,
shelves, which was like totally against OSHA regulations, but I would climb the shelves because I was a stuntman. I was like, well, of course I'm going to climb the shelves and just. So I would go down the aisle. I wish I had video of this. It was hilarious because I did evidence intake, so I'd take like a refrigerator or something and I'd put it on the forklift,
oh
drive
my
it down the
god,
aisle, raise it up 15
oh
feet,
my
lock it, climb up, go to the top,
god.
and move it onto the uprights onto the warehouse racks, and then climb down and repeat. Um, so
Jeez,
anyway, the
oh my
reason I
god.
had the Nokia was because I would drop my phone like once every 2 hours or so. And when you drop a phone from 15
Oh
feet up like
no,
that today, it costs you $1,500. But back then, it was kind of
every
like
time.
yeah, it was like Legos, and you just put it back together, and
Oh yeah,
you just
like the SIM card might fall out and
yeah,
then you put it back.
not a big deal.
It's amazing. There was
Um,
like one of my favorite memes on the internet is like it has a Nokia with a cover on it and it's like if you ever feel useless, remember that they made a cover for a Nokia.
yeah,
It's very nice.
yeah, for what like pyrotechnics, I guess. Like you just couldn't hurt those things. It's incredible.
Yeah, it's crazy.
Um,
Uh we've fallen so far
yeah, in a sense, haven't we?
in some ways.
Yeah, in some
In
ways we
some ways.
have. Um, so when you were putting these directly onto YouTube, did you have your own channel back then as well?
Yeah, I think I had a channel. I like I didn't do I think most of my videos are still on my YouTube, like just my name. But I didn't put a lot up at all. I don't think I put the like obviously I didn't put the lightsaber thing up. I just like put a couple of like samplers of
Hmm.
like tricking samplers up, but I wasn't super. I think I wanted to make videos, but I wasn't like super into making them. Like I edited some stuff for like summer camp I taught at Taekwondo at my Taekwondo school and stuff, and like things like that. But I didn't really post too many films or anything at the time.
So when you were with Loop Kicks and you go to LA soon after that, what was the ecosystem of demo reels, indie films, and those things as you saw it back then? What were people putting online and why?
Mm. I mean, because I moved to LA in 2015. Um, so I guess before that, like when I was into watching the tricking videos and like making samplers and stuff, I guess people were making kind of longer form tricking samplers where it was like tricking, but also the vibe of like the group setting, like Phil Gibbs's samplers or like some loop kick samplers with like groups and like people actually wrote like scripts I think for them in a way like they had trick goals that they wanted to get for their next sampler. I know like the Colorado trickers like Nick Vale and all those people were like very into having like oh my next sampler is going to have like this combo and like these moves and they were always like 15 minutes long but that was before YouTube had like rights problems, so you could just put any song on it and like it'd be fine. So it's cool because you can edit to the music that you want, you know, on it, and like license free or like I don't know, free license or whatever was not a thing.
Hmm.
So it was very like creative, very flowy, like whatever people wanted to do. It was very personality oriented, I think.
When
And then
yeah.
as far as like demo reels, I don't know because that was quite a. I mean, in my brain, it's like a massive jump, but then, yeah, it's like 5 years later. But then it felt like it was a long time because I obviously grew up a lot and like changed a lot between 2010 and 2015. Um, but yeah, I don't know what you mean by demo reel style. I think
Well,
that kind of remains.
hmm. Yeah, like what is the function of having, like, what is the purpose of putting up a tricking demo reel then versus now? Like, would somebody put up a
Hmm.
tricking demo reel for any reason today?
Yeah, that's a good question. I haven't been following tricking as closely now. I know back then it was more of like the creative thing or like to, solidify the fact that you're the first or whatever number person that landed triple cork or whatever. So I think um people still do put up tricking. I mean, people do put up tricking videos a lot. I think it more often seems to happen on Instagram, or maybe that's just where I follow it now. So it's the shorter form stuff. I don't know. I think people still like because there's a difference between sorry, I'm all over the place. There's a difference between trickers for the sake of tricking who, maybe have other work that they do for careers and then tricking within the stunt industry and stunt community. And I think you wouldn't as a stunt person just put out necessarily a tricking reel. You'd put out like all acrobatic styles or like your whole, whatever. It's more stunt based in general. And then maybe you might put or I might put tricking stuff on Instagram as shorter clips, but it wouldn't be a big part of your demo reel. Whereas I think if you are doing tricking more as a hobby or as a sport rather than a career, you might actually put more effort into just like having a compilation of your best moves from the
Hmm.
last year, whatever.
Hmm.
But I'm just assuming.
Did I mean, was there a big, you're with Loop Kicks back then? Was there a sort of a hunch that if you put this demo reel material out there, um, like was the goal to teach classes or was it to get the eyes of Hollywood stunt coordinators? Was it targeted at all?
Neither. I think honestly, like just making samplers for the sake of making samplers. I don't know. I think maybe it's a little bit of a um like a recognition thing like oh you have samplers up so you have like you're probably someone but it's also just like a compilation of stuff you've done and it's fun to look back on
Hmm.
as well for yourself. It's almost like a diary entry I think back then.
Hmm.
um yeah, there was no, at least for me, there was no intention of like doing it for Hollywood later. When I was auditioning for Cirque du Soleil quite a bit and trying to get into that before I moved to LA, I did make several videos like compilations and like big for auditions basically for them. So I did make like a specific sampler slash reel of all my movement for them to submit. But I think that was the first one that actually had an intention beyond just being like, hey world, this is tricking and it's really fun and here's my version of it.
Right. Yeah. The was there a was there a time when you saw the industry paying more attention to demo reels, like tricking demo reels?
um I mean kind of. I think superhero movies in general, and I'm skirting a thin line. I support the SAG after strike and all that. But I think superhero movies in general, as a general concept of a vague, amorphic thing, obviously care more about tricking and flips and acrobatics like that. And I think it gets same with video games, like obviously Spider-Man video game, and like a lot of video games have acrobatics in them
Hmm.
that have to stem from something. Like it's not just going to get animated into being, or it does, but then we have to like bring it back to reality and then it gets animated again, which is such a fun process. But I think that, trying to bring the realism to that kind of stuff, like the crazy high flying comic book stuff, I think really brought tricking and parkour into the mix. But I also don't know, like I joined the industry in 2015, so there well could have been a lot more attention on tricking and stuff way before I'm even aware of it. Like I know like Kim Do worked on like Ninja Assassin or whatever way back in the day, and I remember like going to see it because I met Kim Do at Loop Kicks, and that was a really cool thing. I was like, look, a tricker's in a movie, like how amazing. And like he did a cork in it or something. So I'm sure that tricking in its own way was like kind of a bigger part of stuff before I got here, obviously. And then of course like Hong Kong style stuff, like they, do a lot of acrobatic stuff, wire assisted or not. And that goes back way further than tricking, I think's been around.
Yeah. I remember in I guess it was like 07, 08, I went to Loop Kicks also. And we were all, I had shot a feature, and the feature was not a tricking martial art movie. Like we really wanted to kind of do the more Hong Kong style. Emphasis was on impact and falls and long takes of choreography, And we all thought like, well, we should probably train up on this tricking stuff. So we started going to Loop Kicks every now and then. And I remember that moment when I saw Anis Churfa.
Of course.
He was at Loop Kicks. I don't know, he might have been 8. I have no idea how old this kid was. He's like a beanpole, 6'2", and he did like a round off cork, X out, cork again, and landed with like time to eat lunch before he hit the ground. Like, and I'm kind of looking at the other stunt people, and we're trying to do backflips, And I look at them, I'm like, guys,
that's amazing.
I don't know if we're gonna be able to compete against this guy. And Kim Do is out there too. There are a lot of guys out there. The Zero Gravity guys had already all made it.
Nice.
Right?
Yeah.
They had all moved to LA. So it hit us pretty hard. I remember that like, the late noughts, 08, 09. Tricking was the thing for sure.
Oh yeah. I bet Jeremy Marinas was somewhere around there being a child as well.
I think I remember him doing a cheat 7 and wondering like after he kicked why he was still in the air. Like it didn't make any sense how you could cheat 7, kick, and then land. It didn't make any sense. So I think
you're like
yeah, and I was like, okay, that's a different kind of stunt guy.
Yeah.
What are we gonna do, guys? Yeah. And the rest is history.
Well, and it's tough because your intro to tricking was like one of like, with Anis, like his style is so timeless.
Yeah.
Like he's one of those people that can make a simple thing look just exquisite. And it's, like with him, it's like, it's not about the move, it's about the lines and like the shape and stuff. His was like one of the main samplers I used to watch like on Bylang, like, just because it is so like he can do stuff that's not impressive when other people do it, and it's just amazing. Same with the 720 example. Like
yeah, there's just and I guess, I mean, in your experience, what would impress casting more, right? What is more impressive? Yeah, like
backflip.
Yeah, so like, is it a very nice sort of like, what would you say, like character-driven backflip, or a triple cork that's just technically incredible without like much character? A backflip.
Literally a backflip. Like if you stalled a backflip, like, and then tucked, you're done. Like done. Yeah. Maybe like a crowd awakener, like a cork where you like open and your legs like make this big arc, like with the Anis example, like that kind of thing. I feel like it's anything that would make a good picture, because regular people's brains don't catch up as fast. Like they wouldn't understand, like you'll do, and I'm behind on terminology with tricking too, because I haven't been keeping up with it, but like you could do like a cartwheel wrap full, which is quite a, fairly advanced move as far as like basics go, because you land on the first foot that comes in on the cartwheel, and then you don't land on the second one and it goes behind you, and that's what lifts you into a full twist. or cart, whatever, or cart wrap double or something. But like regular people wouldn't even notice the difference of like, oh, you went off of 1 foot, not two. So it's like finding the moves that are impressive and things that they can comprehend at the same time.
Yes.
Because a lot of times, yeah, you could do the more difficult thing, and they're like, "Ooh, I like the one with the straight legs, or I like the spinny one, or whatever." But yeah, usually it's simpler, better executed is better. And funnily enough, like the same kind of went for NASCAR tournaments when I was competing. Like as long as you landed solidly with your flips, they were more happy, because I remember I kept trying to put like more difficult stuff that I like wouldn't land perfectly into things. Difficult for me, not difficult in general. But yeah, and then like I'd get beat by someone who did like an aerial or like a flash kick instead of like a full. I'm like, what the heck? Yeah. But it's just because, like the promoters and the judges at the tournaments were not used to seeing that amount of tricking either. Yeah. So like they'd just be like, oh, their landing was solid and they came out with a nice punch, and it's like, okay.
But do you think that, are they seeing more character in these simpler moves?
I think so. And just like height and like the cadence of it maybe is cool. Like the stalled backflip example, I think, is a really good one, because that is such a crowd pleaser. Like, one, I don't jump that high from standing, so I don't do stalled backflips. So I'm jealous. But I think the timing of like a person is going into the air and they're rising and they're still just jumping straight up, and then they tuck in, like they finish their flip at the top and then come down, having time for dinner or whatever. Like I think it's like a timing and a cadence and like where, yeah, I don't know. I think the like surprising timing with a simpler move is always gonna win.
Is it because it looks more dangerous? Because
maybe,
because if when I see a triple cork, I think technically that's incredible, and then but I kind of have to rewind the tape in my head to like rewatch what I just saw. But when I see a cork stall or a backflip back stall, like Steve Tirada would do those too, right? There's kind of this thing inside me, like on a Disneyland ride at the top of the like a roller coaster ride, that kind of like falls inside me for a second, like, oh, this guy's gonna fall on his head, and then nope, he lands, and it does something. And maybe, I don't know, maybe that's what they're looking at, where maybe even if they could interpret what triple cork is, even then, like if you did a single cork and you just make it look dangerous, or you get that drama for 2 seconds.
Yeah. And I mean, I agree with that as well, from like, we're both trained to watch action and stuff, but I think that I prefer that, drama filled single cork over a triple cork visually better. Or like a spin hook kick with a beautiful extension and a line better than like maybe a more, I don't know, technically correct one or something. Like there's something to it when someone puts their own flair onto something, or when they put a little bit of extra something that's not the same. Because triple cork is hard to add drama into, right? Or to add any flair into, because you don't have the time. You like kick, you twist, it's gonna be really tight, it's gonna be really technically nice, but it's gonna be simple looking. Whereas some other trick with like a cork variation where your legs are flying all over the place looks way cooler and might be simpler.
When looking at some of the best wrecks from the 80s Hong Kong film era, and I see this too with Buster Keaton, I'm starting to watch his films again.
Oh yeah.
And the way that there's a way that they fall, it's kind of shared between and Chaplin too would do this, and it wouldn't even be necessarily when he fell. It's just if he's like close to an edge, and they have this way, with falling with Keaton and Chinkarlak and Mars, where they hit a pose that looks out of control. Yeah, it looks like a knot, like something's wrong, Something's wrong.
Yeah,
It looks like your average Joe getting hit by a
would not
car.
make out of it alive.
Yeah, and he's
Yeah,
like this, and you go like,
yeah.
how's that gonna work out? And of course, they live to see another day usually, and like that. I think that really registers with people subconsciously. Not even subconsciously. I think they feel it in that moment, and they know what they're looking
Mhm.
at. They think this guy's gonna die.
Yeah, yeah, sure. I do think we have something like in our brain or chemistry or whatever that is just like, oh, that doesn't look right. That's dangerous. Like, I don't know. I've seen so many videos of like dad reflexes.
Yeah,
Like, there's no time
I love
for the
those.
brain to comprehend that your kid is falling off of the freaking counter and for
Yeah,
you to reach your hand out and grab their little
yeah.
leg as their head is
No, it's
dangling
exactly
near
how it
the
works.
ground.
It's
Like,
exactly how it works.
so there's got to be that same like visceral thing with
Yeah,
watching action.
yeah. Well,
um
I mean, if you were to, there's an interesting book about this. A little bit of it seems like pseudoscience. It's called Mirrors in the Brain, and it's sort of like the
Ooh.
quintessential piece
Oh, is
on
it about,
this is
is it
on
like mirror neurons
mirror
and stuff?
neurons. Yeah, which is like, okay, hold
Love
on,
that.
everybody, hold
No,
the.
they're real.
They're real. I agree with you. They're real. They are not the answer to all life's problems. They are not the way, like, there's a
They
lot of
are the
pseudoscience.
way.
Yeah, there's a lot of pseudoscience around mirror neurons, but this book is very
I'm sure.
mechanical in the way that it
Okay.
approaches mirror neurons. And the way that he describes the way mirror neurons work is that when you're observing somebody perform an action, right? Or even if you're watching a chimp or a robot perform an action, probably even a car to some extent. But
Robots.
yeah, yeah, like, and when you watch something performing an action, you develop what's called an internal motor representation,
Hmm.
IMR. That's sort of like a process that your mirror neurons do. And it's like, if I were to if I'm kind of just backing up toward this, and
Ah,
yeah,
yeah.
exactly. So what you're doing is you're building kind of an intention vocabulary in your mind of like, what is Eric going to do by doing this? You think he's going to bump into that and that thing's going to fall over? There's a whole bunch of these kind of like
Hmm.
internal motor representations that just start appearing when you see me
Hmm.
doing this, right?
Hmm.
Or if I hold my hand out to shake, it's like the IMR of Eric is wants to shake hands, right? For the most
Yeah.
part, right? And so you build kind of an intention vocabulary around that. And so similarly, like when you see somebody falling, you tend to build in like an IMR of that person, and you feel like you start building this intention vocabulary, like they're
Hmm.
gonna fall on their heads, and you feel that, and it's just
Yeah.
like I mean, it's something that you get inundated with. Like you're not able to control that unless you like block
Yeah.
it, right? You could literally like block the screen, but you can't help but see it.
Which sometimes people do in scary movies or
Totally.
with things that are like terrifying or horrific. They're
Yeah.
like,
Yeah. Or like as a
you
martial
know,
artist
like,
too. So, and the thing too is like he calls it action understanding. As your action understanding improves, like the more martial arts you do and the more tricking you do, the more you also understand the risks of certain moves, right? The more you understand the risks of certain landings, of certain poses in the air. You understand that this pose in the air is going to cause an ACL tear, right? You know that this
yeah,
pose in the air is going to be an L5 hernia, right? You know all these things.
yeah.
And so
Which is
as
why
this,
it's,
yeah, so as a coach, you sort of like have this like very
yeah.
developed vocabulary, right? And you kind of like can,
Mm.
guide your student in the right way. But I think even just the average person has enough kinesiological data to look at a backflip, a guy going up and
Hmm.
just kind of like doing a Jesus pose. and
Yeah.
and the
Yeah.
average person, I think,
Floating.
yeah, and the average person I think has like a well enough attuned baseline IMR to understand like, oh crap, that guy's gonna fall on his head.
Hmm. Well,
And
yeah, because we know how gravity works and how high we can jump as
yeah,
individuals, and that is
yeah,
still going up when I would have already fallen, and then he's gonna flip. Yeah,
yeah. And that's all built
and
in.
then
And like you don't even think about it when you're making that action and
no,
understanding.
yeah, exactly. And I was gonna say, I think like with the old, oh my gosh, Buster Keaton and stuff, like they set up in this pose or whatever, and then usually I feel like setting that up so that people have the IMR and everything, and then switching it on
Yes.
them so it surprises them
Perfect. Yes.
is where it really makes you go, what? Like, that's where it is. Like, you do go backwards and you're like, oh no, and then you just stand up and walk away, or whatever, or flip out of it or something, and it's like, how, like, because you have all these preconceived notions of what's going to happen, and then that doesn't happen, and that's what really makes you pay attention to it.
Exactly. I mean, that's you're just talking about physical comedy now, where
exactly.
the physical comedian, if they're kind of a savant in terms of reading the crowd, and they kind of understand the language that they understand, like, if as the comedian, if I know what my audience understands and what they can anticipate, then I can play off of that, right?
Yeah.
So,
if it's a bunch of MMA martial artists, you're going to be doing something completely different than if it's a bunch of executives or something. Yeah.
Exactly. And I just use this classic, example where, somebody's trying to change a light bulb, but he can't quite reach the light bulb. And someone says, oh, hold on. And he goes and grabs a chair, brings it over, and then he sits on it to watch the guy change the light bulb and struggle, right? So
exactly. Did you see what just happened? I was like, oh yeah, he's going to tell the guy to sit on the chair. And then you said, sit down. And I laughed, like, legitimately. I was just like, oh my God.
And that laugh is
so dumb.
And that laugh is that sort of like disconnect between, okay, I expected this, but then this happened. This is actually really logical. And it kind of like causes that laughter. So
exactly.
We tapped into this millions of years ago, probably.
Oh yeah, I'm sure. Like cave paintings, they're like, oh, they're gonna spear they speared the bird. Or
there we go. And people have a good laugh at a cave painting.
Yeah, or I don't know, what's the shadow puppets or something with the dog.
Yeah, right.
I used to know how to make that.
Yeah, it's not as impressive without the shadow.
Yeah. Thanks. Yeah. Right.
I think that stuff is. I mean, I think that when you get into like magicians, for example, who are like these very kind of natural crowd readers, and they can sort of know what people are looking at, and they just sort of, if you just know where people are going to look, then you get all this free time over here to do whatever you want. And there's probably some element to that also of, tricking in front of a crowd, I would assume, right? You're reading the crowd as you're doing this.
Yeah, I'm sure. I didn't do too many like live shows, like anyone from Sideswipe would probably be an amazing person to talk to with that. But yeah, there's definitely like, I did a lot of team demos. It was just on a smaller scale. But yeah, there's definitely like back to the backflip and all that. Like, you're not gonna throw the most technically difficult stuff. You're gonna throw the stuff that people like. And I think that's across parkour and across other disciplines as well. Like, there's just moves that are visually amazing that people love, that like create nice pictures. Like, I really do think it's like, if it makes a better painting or a better picture, it's going to be a better move for like a general audience crowd pleasing thing.
Do you think that
it's like the silhouette?
Do you think that the same people like seeing the same thing over and over, and why do they want to see the same move, or the same horror or jump scare? Like, what did you ever get an intuition on that when you were performing?
The same people though, like,
yeah, like, I mean, you have to assume that the crowd has seen all of this before.
Sure. Yeah, I mean, with film for sure, like, there's obviously genre stereotypes and stuff. I mean, with both film and performance, I think maybe there's a certain safety to redoing stuff that people like already, and can recognize. And I think you end up doing what a lot more often as a performer, without necessarily regard for the audience. Because you're like, oh, I know they like the stalled backflip, so we'll do that. But then, I don't know, maybe with live performances, like, people like seeing the same thing because they'll bring their friend next time and they'll know what's gonna happen. Like, they'll be like, oh, this person does the best, like, Jesus backflip or whatever, and they can kind of be the one that predicts it. Or I don't know about like the same person, like Jackie Smith or whatever, going and being like, I want to see the same thing over and over again. I don't know if that's necessarily true, but I do think there's something cool about or something like nice and comforting about like having the same, being able to like get the same familiarity with something.
Yeah.
And maybe even to be able to put people in a box, you know, like especially with Instagram stuff, like I'm so on and off with posting and everything, but even even my Instagram I think is a little too varied sometimes. Like I think people like being able to go on someone's page and it's like it's all someone chopping tomatoes with a sword.
Right.
And like that's all the videos that are there. Because even I've noticed I've noticed with myself too, I'll like find someone's video. I'm like, oh, this is hilarious. This person's chopping tomatoes with a sword. I click on it and like I have to scroll through to find the one other chopping tomatoes with a sword thing. And I'm like, that's not what I signed up for. Like, I don't want to see you teaching katana technique. I want to see the chopping tomatoes with a sword. Like, want that specific, like, oh, this is Jessica and all she does is chop tomatoes with a sword.
Right.
Like, you know, I think just being able to expect things out of people and just be predictable in that way, I think is like nice for humanity. And it's obviously incorrect, but like
yeah, it's wrong. I mean, I kind of agree with you. I don't do these, you know, I don't do the podcast for the views, because if I did, I'd be in trouble, because the podcasts they just don't get the views. People talk about Rope-a-Dope, and somebody came in here and asked, when is Rope-a-Dope 3 coming out? And it's like, it's not even what this is. It's not even what this is about. Like,
yeah, and it'll be years later.
Yeah, yeah, and or like Tekken,
or like,
right?
or Kictionary.
Kictionary,
yeah, exactly.
yeah. And so I'll you know, put up an action essay, and some of the responses will be like, when are you doing Eddie Gordo for Tekken? And I'm just like, I can't blame them, right? Because the algorithm has told them, hey, here's this guy. He does this thing.
Yeah, this is what he does.
Yeah, this is his thing.
Yeah.
It's almost not even the algorithm that does it. It's just the fact that the platform shows you, like, here's this, you know, here's Thekla. She does flip. She does a flip. Here, she does a flip. And and you go like, oh, Thekla does, that's a brand. And subscribe. And when you subscribe, you know, and it's that. And then the next 50
stop doing flip, it does sword. Yeah.
So the reason that I do the podcast is not to get maximum views. I do it because I like it, and you know, I don't care what the algorithm does. And if people are dissatisfied, then like 99% of the people watching, unfortunately, are wrong.
Hey, it happens,
and that's fine. And I think over time, I think that works out. So I would encourage you not to please the algorithm, and everybody listening, don't please the algorithm. You know, we're all multifaceted. And this idea that it's almost like we're being pushed in this kind of autistic direction, right?
Sure.
We're like, oh, you're
like
the
hyper focus.
Yeah, you're the guy that can blow up. I don't know. You blow up magazines. I have no idea what it would be.
There's literally a guy on YouTube or whatever that will make a bunch of water balloons, fill them with water, like a layered water balloon, fill them with water, freeze them, and then cut each layer and be like, oh, and then like you've seen it. I'm sure you've seen it. He has a billion of these videos, like hundreds at least. Yeah. Like he'll just cut the first water balloon, whoa, and then like the other one, and like whoa, and it's like this, like the same framing, the same thing. Right. Maybe they have glitter, maybe they don't. It's very wasteful. It makes me sad, but it is a very specific, like, you know, product that is exactly that. Like, it's so funny.
So I think, go ahead.
I was gonna say, I think people do that as humans though too. Like you'll meet, I don't know, I do it, I'm sure. I'll like meet someone, you know, a good example, like you'll meet someone in a certain context and then not recognize them outside of jujitsu class or whatever because they're not wearing the same clothes, or like people in your life that knew you during a certain time period of your life, they're like, oh, you like chocolate ice cream, and you know, since then you've hated chocolate ice cream.
Yeah, it's kind of like your mom coming around all the time, going like, "I thought you always liked chocolate," and it's like, I changed, Mom. I'm a different person today than I was yesterday.
Yeah, exactly. And I think it's really hard for us as individuals. Like, I'll still look the Instagrams of children I used to teach when they were like 10 and be like, oh, they're so cute. And they look completely different now.
Yeah.
But all I remember of them is like how they did a front kick when and it was adorable, or like how they, whatever, like the few little things that we have as context for these people, like it stands outside of time almost. So like same thing with moves, like maybe
Yeah.
what we were talking about earlier with like, oh, people like seeing the
Yeah.
same things from the same people, because it makes sense in a way that
Yeah.
people evolving doesn't make sense in our
I mean,
brains.
it makes sense just from even like a Greek sculpture perspective, right? Like when you decide that, okay, I'm gonna take David, I'm gonna pick this pose, right? Or I'm gonna take,
Mhm.
Teddy Roosevelt, I'm gonna pick this pose, and this is what he's gonna be remembered for. And it's like,
Yeah,
yeah, there's the other like 99 years of his life that we're just like neglecting by looking at this
yeah,
one statue. And maybe, yeah, I don't know, maybe mass media kind of has that same effect on us where we just tend to fall into that
yeah.
kind
It's
of,
just a
yeah, we kind of fall into that default mindset where, oh, the way that I see this person is exactly who they are. When in fact, like
yeah,
if you called them right now or messaged them, they would tell you like, I'm not like that. Like,
yeah,
I like
absolutely.
painting.
Yeah, yeah, exactly. And they like wanted to put painting on their
Yeah.
Instagram for forever, but it wouldn't work or what. Yeah, exactly. But I don't think it's just like you're saying with like the sculptures and stuff. Like, I do think there's like an inherent human thing there. Like, it's not just current media landscape that has that. I think it accentuates it
Yeah.
probably, but I do think it's definitely been a part of humanity for a while, because you have to categorize people and like be able to kind of put them into boxes, because if your brain and your perception of them is always changing with them, like
Mm,
plus 150 or whatever are in your tribe, like that's a massive
yeah.
amount of people to keep track of with their every, even if it's just ice cream flavors, like, you know what I mean?
Yeah. Yeah. Um, we've got a visitor in the chat. Goes by the name of Chris Devera. I remember Chris. He says, "Hey guys, pleasant to hear your
Chris,
voices. Loving your random clips,
what's
Thekla."
up?
So he's a fan. He's a fan of everything you do. So
I'm a fan
keep.
of Christopher. Are you
Me too,
kidding?
man. Chris was very welcoming to us back at Loop Kicks. So it's good to see you,
Same.
Chris. He says, "I recall
Yeah.
when you were a little camper. Look at you now." Yeah, see, there you go. Like you're a grown person, and you're very different now. So
Yeah, I'm sure Chris has some wild, one story that he's like, "Oh, Tekla, the one who did this," and
yeah,
it's like, I'm like, "What?" No, Chris is a legend. Hi.
yeah. Very cool. Good to see you, Chris. We had a couple questions come in. Martial arts
Okay.
film freak. This might be putting you on the spot, but I'll ask you anyway. Tekla, what do you think of Taylor Lautner's kicks? I know he has an XMA background. So Taylor Lautner was the fellow in.
Yeah,
He's the
yeah.
werewolf, right?
Yeah, he's the werewolf and also a boy in a shark suit way back when. I know he trained at XMA like with Mike Chat for a long time. Their uniforms were really cool with the silver and the sleeveless thing. I actually don't remember much about Taylor's kicks. I remember him as the bow staff kid. Like the
Mm.
one video I always saw was of him just like killing it at bow staff. I think he has really good kicks. They're very like Mike like, which is to say like really clean line and like sticks it. Um, yeah, I'm sure they're great.
Interesting
Super cool too.
career because you have just like a very talented XMA performer starring in a big Hollywood movie. Um,
Yeah.
you kind of see that with Spider-Man guy. What's his name? I'm blanking on his name. Not Tom Hardy.
Holland.
Holland. Tom Holland.
Yeah.
Yeah. And I love how Tom Holland moves.
Yeah, me too. Yeah,
And
absolutely.
you can tell in Uncharted that it's like you could kind of tell that they could breathe when he was on camera. because the
Yeah,
camera, like, they don't cut much when he's doing his stuff. He's on the pole and he slides down and he just kind of
hmm
follows. And um, yeah,
yeah.
it's interesting seeing guys like that make it big in Hollywood. I think that's a huge like thumbs up for stunt performers. I know I'm not supposed to talk about movies right now,
No,
but
we can.
I
We
might get
think
kicked
we
out
can
of the
talk
union,
about
but that's all
people.
right.
I think we could talk about people, and I don't know how far back the like we shouldn't talk about movies and stuff thing goes because we're just trying not to bring attention
Yeah,
to things that we're striking against. But I don't know where that applies because it just said like we're not really talking about TV and
yeah,
film. And
yeah.
I'm happy to discuss like that we're not talking about it. We're just not talking about
Well,
it.
here's a question then. So, with someone with a skill set like Taylor Lautner, um, if you were to say go into an audition with that level of skill, what should you show?
A backflip. I don't
Okay,
know. I think that's it. Cut,
then
print, we're done. Um, I've been trying to figure out what to show in auditions for a long time now. I have yet to figure it out.
yeah,
I do think anything that's character based or aligns with what they're trying to see you as, um, most is most helpful. Sorry. Yeah, I think what I've come to terms with is casting directors and or whoever's making the commercials or whatever they're making um don't have time to picture you in as many iterations as you have of yourself. So if they need to see you as a certain character, just come in as close to that as you
mm,
can and like have the moves that are similar. Like if you're going out for a movie where you're playing a boxer, don't do tricking, like do some shadow
mm,
boxing. Literally bring your boxing gloves, your wraps, whatever. Like they can't, it's not that they're not imaginative, it's that they literally don't have the brain capacity to do it because they're looking at so many pictures of
yeah,
individual faces and like so many audition videos. Like if you're not already 90% of what they're looking for, they're not going to be able to imagine the rest, I think. I don't know.
it's great advice.
Yeah,
Keep it simple.
because it's like people are always like, oh, they're so dumb, they're so unimaginative. Like if you want me in a white shirt, you should be able to like imagine me in a white shirt if I wear a black shirt. But it's like it's just out of respect for them too. Is like do the movements that correlate to whatever character you're doing. Like if you're a superhero, do some flips. If you're like yeah, and especially if it's something iconic like like Spider-Man or whatever, like do the moves that are iconic,
Yeah, it's great advice.
but also other cool ones. I don't know. Yeah, I just think making their jobs easier is always a good choice with auditions.
Yeah, when I haven't done many auditions, I have to admit, because I have kind of a
Because you just get direct booked, and that's better.
I wish it was like, I mean, I do this kind of like backdoor routine, which like doesn't work very often.
Okay.
My Hollywood career was like not backdoor as in like, you know, behind the scenes, talk to people behind the scenes, um, and try and just
That's
send
smart.
video clips and show like, hey, look, I'm really good, but I'll totally fall on my face at an audition. It's like I've always been terrible at auditions. Do they
But
do they ever ask you to ad lib at auditions?
yeah, there. It's a funny thing. I don't know if it's like that in all auditions because I don't do that many theatrical ones because I don't have a theatrical agent at the moment. But in commercial auditions, it's really funny because they can't ask you to, what is it? There's like a phrasing they can't use. Like they can't ask you to improvise because then they could get like if they like what you say, like they try to like write it in the commercial, you should technically like get writing rights or something for it so you could like sue them for it. So now they say, which like obviously not worth suing for, because it's like it would be such a massive
You don't know who
situation. And
we're talking about here, Tekla.
no, I
But
know, but
yeah,
like
I see your point.
I've talked to I've talked to a few people about it to like get their, what their idea is about it. Cause it's like, oh yeah, sure. If they like take what you said in your audition, don't hire you, and then like, use it because it's cool. Like, is it worth, reporting it with SAG or like suing them or something? And it's like, it would just completely ruin the relationship. And like, just, it seems like more of a pain in the ass than it is, like, especially for what you get a tiny writer credit and like, I don't know, like $1,000 or something. But that said, like they can't exactly say to ad lib or like improvise, so they kind of say like make it your own or something, or like feel free to like play around with the dialogue or whatever. But they do ask that. Commercial auditions do it a lot. And I think again it goes back to the character. Like if you know what you're playing or who you're being, like if you were, I bet could audition or like ad lib anything as Kratos at this point, like since you worked so closely with that character. Or like, I mean, basically you it's not verbal, but you ad lib anytime we're working on video game stuff like move sets and things. You're like, oh yeah, like, I don't know, I think if he's hitting a person over here he's going to do this thing, or like spinning this thing or that, like because you just understand the character so well that you know what they would do in that situation. So I think with that makes like ad-libbing and improvising a lot easier if you know who you're being. So same thing with the move set and the ad-lib, like just as long as you can understand who you're trying to be, then should be good, at least for the part of the audition where you're just being them. Then you can fall on your face after you.
When do you typically get the information about what the character is for the audition?
Commercials like 2 days, 1 day before. Sometimes they don't send you sides and it's just there, but usually you kind of get like the synopsis of like, she's a skater girl, she's cool, but she doesn't think she's cool or whatever. Like one of those. Or like, yeah, I don't know, like it's simple enough stuff, but then you can also get a lot of information out of what company it's for by looking up their other, I don't do this often enough and I really should, but like you can look up their other commercials and kind of see what style they work on. Like Nike has a completely different style of filming and story than like Geico does, right? Like, so that also tells you a lot about what your character should be as well.
Can you talk about, you worked on Last of Us 2, and this is a soft transition into our new segment, which is called How You See It.
Ooh, I like that.
I'll have to make a thing for it, like a little video I play, like the segment video.
Oh, I like it.
How you see it, or whatever.
How you see it.
Yeah, kind of like
saying how you see it and how they see it.
Yeah, kind of a Sesame Street kind of thing.
Yeah.
And so some of the videos that Thekla sent over are her video game works and an indie film that she's worked on. The big one is Last of Us 2. And before we get into the actual, meat and potatoes of what you did on that, talk about the audition process, whatever you are willing to talk about anyway.
I don't know if I auditioned for it.
You walked in and just took over.
I think it was one of those direct booking situations.
See, this is my technique. You nailed it.
So with mocap, it's confusing sometimes. There are motion capture auditions. There are also a lot of motion capture studios that if you work on something with them, they'll keep your information on file. So you're basically in a roster of if they, need to search, if they need to hire someone for some other stuff. So Last of Us was at Sony Santa Monica, so or Sony Interactive, so I've already worked with them on God of War and some other stuff. Actually, God of War, they found me because of a video I had on YouTube doing bow staff stuff, and they're like, "Hey, we want to bring you in." So it can happen anyway. I did.
Just for the record, real quick though, I'm much better at bow staff than Thekla, but she did take over for me on all the bow staff stuff for God of War Ragnarok. I didn't do a single bow staff thing in that entire game because I'm a total klutz. Anyway, I just wanted to clear the record on that.
That's not true at all. I think I was. That's funny. No, no, it was for the previous God of War because it's like they needed some like bow staff stuff for a Valkyrie or whatever, like one of them. Um, what else did we do bow staff on? Was it God of War or was it Mortal Kombat?
Probably both.
I think we
Well,
did a
because
lot on.
anytime I did bow staff on God of War, I would do as much as I could until the bow staff would fly off in some other direction, and I would just kind of finish, and I would hit a cool pose, and I would ask James, it's like, James, can you make that staff go back into my hands? And he'd go, yeah, don't worry about it, because I'm a
That is the
klutz.
beauty. That is the beauty of mocap. Like 100% confidence will get you far once you've already gotten the job.
So
But you do
you've done
have to
bow
have
staff.
skill.
They found your bow staff video, and that got you in, is what you're saying.
Yeah, that got me in with Sony Santa Monica, Sony Interactive. And then so I was in their roster. So I've done several different games with them. So I don't think I actually auditioned. Yeah, I think they just like called me and they're like, "Hey, you're doing this game," and then like we get there and they're like, "It's The Last of Us," and I'm like, "It's what?" But I really do love like I like that game and the characters and stuff now, but I don't think I knew what it was before. I'm really bad. I'm trying to work on it with like knowing what's what. I've gotten a lot better. I used to be completely clueless. I was like, "God of what?"
So you came and did
Yeah,
Last
so
of Us
no
2.
audition.
No audition. There's no bow staff either, as far as I know. Or was there?
I don't think so. I
Hmm.
don't think so. There's like a knife
Right.
that always comes out at the perfect opportune moment. You're like fighting a hand-to-hand fight, and then you're like, "Oh yeah!" There's guns. There's backpacks. I think, yeah. There's a girl without an arm, which I also did some of the mocap for.
Oh, did
What
you
was her?
did you like how did you do that?
Yana. I think it was in a loop. We like tied it so that I just didn't have like, yeah, it was just like this. And then obviously they cleaned up the data because I can't imagine that being a comfortable thing to figure out where the mocap markers are. But they did it. Yeah, I think it was just like I was like holding a strap where it was like tied to it. Nice efficient way to do it. Yeah, I think I've only done like 2 motion capture auditions specifically. One of them I got the audition, did literally 90% of the shooting for the project, and then it got canceled, which I still don't know what the name of it was, but it was really fun to shoot. And then they just scrapped the whole project, which is
Yeah, welcome to the
great.
games business.
Oh yeah, like I'm sorry, what? Like I spent so much time on this.
Yeah, and no, you can't use it for your demo reel because it doesn't
Yeah, so
exist.
oh yeah, it's not going to exist and it never will, so that's fun. It's
Yeah.
great. But whatever, there's no residuals in motion cap or in video games anyway, so we didn't. It's not like if a movie got canceled, which also happened.
Oh yeah. Never thought about that.
Oh yeah,
So if a movie gets canceled, oh yeah, there's no residuals to be had. That makes sense.
yeah. Same way, or same way with in a commercial. If you don't make it into the final cut and you did it, like you don't get residuals because you're not in it. Yeah, whatever. But yeah, so we came in, did the things. I know it's kind of disappointing for people. It's like, oh, you didn't audition. Like, there's, yeah, but it is just because of that work relationship at the studio already.
Yeah, I mean that's something that it's a huge hurdle to overcome. Which, and I do caution people when getting into motion capture that there's not a big pool. Well, excuse me, hold on. There's a gigantic pool of people
oh yes,
who are in motion capture. Tons of people.
Yes.
In terms of the people who actually get called to do the gameplay capture, there's not many people because you don't need that. You just don't need that many people.
Yeah, exactly. And cinematic as well. Like, I would say most of the time they pull from actors who are already working actors and maybe doing like in person. Geez, live action stuff or voiceover stuff. Like they're not going to they don't often specifically look for motion capture performers or, you know, whatever. Like they don't seem to care as much, not all places, but most places don't seem to care as much about like having had experience with motion capture versus having had experience with movement or acting. So agreed, like focus on the skills that'll get you there. Like I don't think I've ever had a motion capture demo reel that has like I'm gonna make one now because I've done a lot of work in it, but like that has me in a mocap suit before I, you know, worked in motion capture a lot. Like my demo reel was just a live action demo reel, and they're like, "Oh yeah, we could capture this stuff," you know.
Yeah, that's
So
an
it's not
interesting
specific.
point. Um, how do you get the attention of the animators? And one of the things, the secret sauce that I gave out is like do a lot,
Hmm.
make a lot of stuff, and then demonstrate. You know, make stuff that animators want to look at and are probably going to use for their game,
Hmm.
like dying.
Dying's great. Yeah, absolutely. Like if you want to make a demo reel, literally of you just dying, like falling down a sand dune or like whatever, and it doesn't have to be dangerous, but yeah, exactly. And also just like the subtler stuff too. Like if you don't have crazy high flying acrobatics or like martial arts stuff, like dance is a really good one to show as well for motion capture, just because it shows that you can
Yeah.
do things, and sometimes it's useful.
I
Not
mean,
as much in video games, but in other.
even just doing idle stances
Yeah.
is huge. I mean,
Yeah.
that I don't know what percentage emphasis is on that, but it feels like 20 to 30% of the emphasis on a mocap shoot. Like if you were to just do a full slate, like
Mhm.
idle, nav, combat, finishers, deaths, reactions, the idle is like 30%
Yeah,
because
they take a lot of time on it. Yeah, because that's where the character comes in, right? And like you can animate pretty much everything except for humanity. So like being there, standing there, breathing, looking, scratching your eyeball, whatever, like that stuff is so much harder to animate than like even I don't know you like taking a giant gunshot reaction because they can pull you back and then ragdoll or whatever. Like there's ways around some of the other stuff where like the human aspects are the things that I think they find the most beneficial, and just um like training your mind to come up with like, oh, I'm a human, what would I do if I was a human?
yeah,
Because sometimes that completely um you know the slips your mind. You're like standing there and you're like just
yeah,
and you're like, no, just breathe. Like
yeah,
literally they're trying to get you as a person, like be a person, and you're
yeah,
like, I don't know.
yeah. That's really hard. It's really hard to stand there. It's really hard to walk.
Yeah.
It's extremely hard to just walk. I mean,
Yeah,
like
oh my god. Yeah.
that's one way to
Yeah.
audition somebody. If you know whether or not they've done mocap, is they'll give me a walk
Hmm.
cycle, and they'll walk kind of like
Yeah,
you know,
and
Plan 9
especially
from
if you
Outer
give
Space
them.
guy. Yeah,
Yeah, exactly. When
yeah,
it, especially you give them like, don't look around on this one. Also follow this pattern.
yeah,
Also walk at whatever time tick of like your steps hitting the thing, or like like the speed at which you're walking, and then also walk like a hero but not too stuck up, and then whatever. Like yeah, all that stuff is so useful. So yeah, you don't have to be crazy high flying. You don't have to do anything as long as you could be a good human and portray it. Like I think that's so important.
yeah. I mean, that's an interesting point because I think that's to the credit of PCAP actors. Look,
Hmm.
I've probably ragged on PCAP before, but like one of the realities of PCAP is that like being able to be there as a person is actually really hard, right?
Yeah,
And being able
absolutely.
to do a
It's like
walk
nothing.
cycle, yeah.
Yeah, go
So
ahead. Sorry.
being able to be a character in a walk cycle is really difficult. And then everything sort of is like downstream from that. So when it gets to the combat and all this, like martial artists a lot of the time are very disappointed when they do motion capture because, you know, we come in, Chris asks if it's like any nunchuck work in games and
more
it's
more than you'd think.
yeah, actually surprising. Yeah, me too. I've even had to do some nunchucks. It was horrible. I have to fake it.
Yeah.
I don't have nunchucks in my hand when I do that. but like all of that is like downstream from the character, right? So even when throwing a punch or doing a nunchuck move, if you just then fall back on kind of stereotypical movement, and you're doing the Bruce Lee, they're gonna wonder like, well, why can't you do it like the character, right? And
Yeah,
and even though the martial arts aspect is like rare in a mocap shoot, like you just tend not to do much martial arts in a shoot. Um, when you actually are asked to do the combat, they prefer somebody who is able to be a character during that punch, even if that punch is slow and a little bit awkward. They much prefer that to like a very well timed, perfectly precise punch with no character. And
yeah,
as martial artists,
absolutely.
a lot of the time we are kind of taught like don't have character because you're giving away your secret. You just want to be precise, you want to be surgical.
Hmm.
Did you so, like as I'm watching the Last of Us 2 fights, some dirty fights. There's
Yeah,
a ton of slop. Um,
yeah,
was
it
that?
was fun.
Yeah, talk about that.
It was very intentional. And the final fight with the water, Amy Johnston and I, we actually ended up coming back several times to do pickup shots on that fight, because of, obviously we're in water, so that's one dynamic shift. And then two, they really wanted to make it feel dirty. Like that whole game, they really wanted to make it feel real and feel dirty, but obviously within a framework that like players can figure out when they're in control of the character and when they're not and everything. So like the technicality of it was kind of difficult to come up with, because we had to keep the like, you have to know where you have to be clean, and like if you have, maybe the grab is like a button mash or something, so like you do that and then you hold for a second and then you break out of it, and like it's a lot of kind of doing the fight while being talked through it at the same time of for the timing and everything. And I'm so grateful that it was Amy Johnston who was my partner with a lot of this stuff in the game, because like not everyone can do that kind of performance and make it feel real, fill in the beats in the middle. Like you do need quite a bit of just, I don't know, like understanding of how martial arts fights specifically work, and like how you're looking at your opponent, how you're like gauging timing and stuff. And that's something you really can't, like you can work in into choreography, but it also just has to be felt there. So with the dirtier stuff, like it really was just like, here's the choreography, and then take that and then layer the characters on top and like watch each other and make sure you're actually reacting to what the other person's doing, as opposed to just being like move one, move two, move three. So it was really fun. Like that was one of the best jobs as far as doing like a fight for video game stuff, has been, because you're right, usually it is a bit like, excuse me, more methodical. Like obviously in game stuff is like you're building the choreo and stuff, and like you have to um you have to make sure it's more clean and visually, like bigger or something. But with this, we kind of just got to go a little wild, and it was cool.
Yeah, it's I mean that fight will go down in history, in my opinion. It should
Yeah,
because it doesn't look like two martial artists fighting.
yeah, I agree.
Um,
Yeah, it was. Yeah, it's really cool. It feels very visceral. It feels like I think the team and everyone, like obviously we did a good job, but like the team did a great job with putting it all together and making it feel very, yeah, very visceral and real.
like what was the when you would do a shot, would they play it back with the characters so that you could see how you performed it? How did that work? What was the iteration process like?
Yeah, they can. I remember it was a pretty, like we did long takes of the shots, I think too. Like we kind of just ran maybe segments or the whole fight. It's been a minute. But yeah, I remember it was quite like they let us play it out quite a bit, um, quite a long time. And then yeah, we would watch back on real time and just kind of see um more or less of like if we're hitting positions right, or if the water is selling or whatever. And also like another reason we came back a couple times was I think they changed the depth of the water, like once, so it was before, it was like they told us it's like at waist height or whatever, and then we played it that way, so obviously that affects a lot of what you're doing physically. So then when the water changed to like ankle or calf height or whatever, we had to go back and reshoot it.
Well, yeah, I was going to ask, did they simulate the physics of the water around your legs somehow?
No, we just kind of tried. Yeah, we didn't. Yeah, we just kind of acted it. And I think we both got it enough that it worked. I don't know what they did in post, maybe, you know, to make it feel more like it, but we just kind of tried to be a little more sloppy.
Yeah.
I wonder, maybe we like stood on mats, but I'm not sure because that would have been weird for data. I don't know. I feel like it was mostly just kind of like, it might have been like a 4-incher or something, but it wasn't. It was nothing crazy. We just kind of made sure that we were more heavy and stuff.
Did you shoot the gameplay parts as well, or did you just shoot the pieces where the characters interact and do those synced motions?
I don't actually know. I think mostly the parts where the characters, like mostly the cinematic stuff. But we definitely did. We did a lot of like getting into a position, and then the director would be like, "Oh, this is a button mash thing." So like anytime there'd be like a struggle, which I found really cool because I don't think I've done that in too many other things. Like you do a fight, you get into this like locked up position, maybe this is a knife or whatever, and like there's branches, right? Like either you button mash, button mash, button mash, they succeed, and you keep going, or you fail and they kill you or something. So like there's a bunch of different versions within that. So I guess that's partly gameplay. But obviously they also have like move sets within gameplay. So I don't.
Yeah, my guess is that they either had already shot the core gameplay mechanics and then they had synced moments that they had scripted beforehand.
Yeah, exactly.
Did they have audio dialogue running when you performed those kind of like call like cinematic gameplay moments?
Yeah, sometimes usually that ends up happening if they've like usually that ends up happening later on in the shoot for a game, it once they've already done the dialogue, because sometimes they haven't done it yet, like the voiceover stuff yet, and then we just get to do our own timing with the fight. But other times, or we'll like set the fight and then they'll go and do VO, and then we'll do like pickups to like match it a little better or whatever. So it depends. I think it was about even.
That's very cool. Did you were you able to choreograph knowing that there were certain injuries that had already happened to the characters?
Yeah, I think that was definitely a consideration. And I think in general, like, yeah, like obviously the girl with the no arm, like clearly. And then even, yeah, even like if, like I don't know specifically, but if an arm was hurt or a leg, like there'd be more limping. Yeah, so we definitely, and obviously like the directors did a really good job of making us aware of stuff, because sometimes when you're shooting mocap, like you'll do a fight with one person and that's like at the beginning of the game, and then the next shot is literally a fight where a lot of stuff has happened. So they were really good with especially near the end of the game when you're just doing pickups and stuff. So they were really good about making sure we knew what had happened and like where we were in the fight. Rally. Sorry, my dog's barking. What was I saying?
You were talking about you were talking about the you were shooting, beginning of the game, the next shot will be the end of the game.
Yeah, exactly. So like obviously knowing if they got hurt between the times or even how tired they were plays a huge part. And I think in general The Last of Us was like a really good, or Last of Us 2, because that's the one I worked on, was a really good, like we stuck to characterization very well. Like I remember a scene where Abby was really scared of heights and she has to like go over this bridge thing that Lev is leading her on, which is the little boy who I was being, and then someone was being Abby. And like we spent a lot of time of just making sure that we know how this character who's afraid of heights would move, and like decide how fast she'd go over it, and like where the bits where she would almost fall are, and like it's cool because not a lot of games have that much character in them. Sometimes they're just, whatever, fighting and some other stuff, which is amazing in and of itself. But to be able to kind of play with that character and like choreograph based on that is really cool.
That's super cool because it feels like you're there.
Yeah.
Because I mean, there will be a tendency for animators to kind of pull back and say like, well, it's going to cost us to add
Sure.
a different navigation system on this. You're walking on the edge of a roof, for example, or on a high
Yeah.
wire, and it does
Yeah.
cost you. You're gonna have to add in, how many megabytes, gigabytes of animation just to like pull off this like new combat system, new navigation system
Hmm.
in
Yeah.
this environment. So the ability to do that, it's a treat. So, and it shows.
Yeah. Absolutely. Absolutely. It's really funny. One of my friends who I worked on the Spider-Man game with, usually when it's like NPC day, like we did a lot of the crowd work and stuff. We would just, we're like, oh, what if they have like a jacket or a backpack or like some cloth or hair or whatever? And he's like, yeah, that sounds expensive.
Yeah.
Like we come up with this idea. It's like,
Yeah.
oh, if this happened, then everyone's like, yeah.
Yeah.
He's like, yeah, it sounds expensive.
It's expensive.
Because it is like any fabric or cloth or hair or whatever animations, like just gonna add hours of time to the project.
That might change soon.
Yeah, true.
I don't know how exactly. There's a lot of really interesting, inverse kinematic IK technology built into Unreal now, where you're able to interact. You could, what am I trying to say? Two things can happen. The first one is that you throw a lot of data at the combat system, a lot of animation at it, and then even like, let's say you do like one navigation set normal and one navigation set tired, right?
Mm-hmm.
And then with IK, it can sort of like make a gradient between the two.
That's amazing.
So you can do like normal, kind of tired, middle tired, and super tired, and maybe even like it can extend beyond that. Be like really tired, so you don't have to shoot five animation sets. Yeah,
figure out. That's so cool. Yeah, because it can figure out like the body posture and like movement or whatever.
Yeah,
that's pretty. See, that's the cool thing about AI, like stuff like that.
Yeah, that's stuff's cool, and I think that will lend to more shooting. Frankly, I think that you're gonna have more shooting as a result. They're just gonna want a ton more data because no matter what, like you said earlier, you can't animate. Okay, because you can't animate the human into a character. Even less so can you depend upon AI to put human into a character, right?
Yeah,
like
at this point at least, yeah.
Yeah, if a human can't do it, an AI can't do it. At this point, with regards to human-like movement, right? Character.
And like choices.
Yeah, exactly. And things that you're not really gonna think of, only things that an actor or a stunt performer would think of. But the other thing is that as IK gets better too, it's going to be easier to bring in a lot of data into the game, and also like network speeds, hard drive size. Games that are like 100 gigabytes now are like fairly common. Those limitations, those like lack of limitations, mean that you can have a ton of animation data. Now, the only issue is that an animator has to go in and clean that stuff. And if there are scripts in place using AI that can clean up that data very easily, well, then you get to shoot a ton of data. So you not only do you have your standard navigation system, you have high wire afraid of heights navigation, you have against the wall navigation, you have all this navigation, and that's great for a mocap performer because that means like days and weeks of work.
Yeah, that's true. And where that would take a decade to get all of that into a game, if even possible, like program wise, like you just put that in and then have it, and then you can shoot the next thing. Yeah.
You did another scene where Abby's trying to kill Ellie, and there's a lot of interaction with the geo in the scene, which again,
another expensive thing.
It's expensive. Did they have the 3D model of the location ready And were they
No.
showing it to you? No, of course not.
1 second before. Actually, they did have part of it. But my phone is dying, so I'm gonna go grab a charger real
All
quick
right,
before
everybody
we.
stay tuned. We'll be right back.
Fine. I'll be back in like 30 seconds.
We'll be right back. Let's see. I'll just put myself who is this pin? Oh yeah, here we go. Yeah, I think the thing for one of the interesting takeaways from all of this, first of all, that there's a big controversy right now regarding AI. Obviously, it's a controversy everywhere in the world. It's a controversy within entertainment because motion capture performers are concerned that that their recorded animations, their recorded navigation, for example, is going to be fed into an AI system and then just sort of be tooled with AI in order to generate thousands of different character movesets. That's certainly possible. There's a system called motion matching. It's very resource intensive. It takes a ton of data. But I think that, there might be a silver lining to this because, as I said, one of the upsides of AI in this case is that it gives developers, it frees them up to be able to work on a lot of other stuff, and it gives animators a ton of extra time to work on other stuff. And I think that really ultimately means that you're just going to end up shooting a lot more stuff. I don't think that there's going to be less shooting. I think it just means that indie devs are going to be booking, single day motion capture shoots, for example, and then rely on AI to build the entire nav set for 50 characters. But then, Naughty Dog, Sony, these companies are going to be shooting a lot more in order to say, like, well, we have all this freed up. We have a team of 300 people. So we might as well put them on the task of like, well, let's do 800 characters in this game that have very different move sets. And I think that could only be good.
Yeah,
for performers.
it would be good unless they get rid of most of the 300 people, keep 20, and then overwork them.
That could happen too.
But I love your optimism, and I'm really with that vision. I think that's really nice and helpful. And I do think, like, obviously more work would be awesome and better, and provided we have the. But even like video games aren't even a consideration at the moment. With the AI stuff, it's mostly like the film and TV. And then also just the strike is also like part of it is AI, and same with the writers. Like they don't want to have to, be hired to like fix AI written scripts and stuff. But a lot of it is just like bringing residuals to streaming and like making sure that the right money is paid.
Yeah.
But it is a very interesting consideration with AI with video games too.
Yeah, it's not a
we haven't even discussed.
Yeah, I mean it's not a black and white issue at all. Because I mean I'm in the camp of saying like AI is here. We have to deal with it.
Oh yeah.
We have to do 100%. We have to deal with it, and what are we going to do as performers, as producers? How then do we best how do we stick up for ourselves as performers? How do we utilize it ourselves? Also, I'm looking at the indie world, and the indie world overwhelmingly benefits from this.
Yes, 100%. I agree with that. Yeah, like because the same way how the internet was a huge benefit to indie filmmakers on YouTube. You can make your own movie, whatever. Like now, it follows that it would kind of be a similar benefit, even just exponentially more for indie stuff, which is 100% amazing and beautiful, and I think it's very cool. An interesting point about the strike too, like A24 and some other like indie film companies get an interim agreement, so they can technically either be shooting or have the potential to hire people now while the strike is going on, because they're saying that they would agree to all the terms that SAG or the WGA are. Be conflating those two. It might just be SAG, but that SAG is asking for. And I think that's such a cool flex, because that's the union basically saying, like, if the indie film company can say yes to all the things we're asking, like there's zero reason you should not be able to afford it. So it's like it's kind of a cool thing that I think SAG is doing.
Yeah, the studio's there's a huge ball of wax there. So I'll be very interested to see what comes out of this.
Yeah. We
Um,
shall see.
so I want
What
to.
crazy
I'm sorry. Go ahead.
I said just crazy times. The last few years in general have been like so telling of how resilient people are, is what I'm gonna say.
Yeah.
But it's cool.
Um,
We're talking about, oh yeah, interacting with the geo in the next bit. Yeah, we were, or did I were you saying something
you
else
said the
between
geo
there?
wasn't ready.
I think I might have spoken too soon. We didn't have too much obviously on set with us. I think we had like little outlines. I feel like we might have had the majority of the geo planned out. I know usually that's not the case. I think we had like, it's always like, there might be something here, avoid that area, and we don't know how far the table goes here or whatever. But they had a vague idea, so we kind of, I don't think we ended up reshooting that one much, so I think they had to have known somewhat where it was
Hmm.
at the time. But I don't think it was like, oh, this is exactly where this is going to be, because obviously that stuff changes.
But there is one big geo stunt where you guys fall through the floor.
Yeah,
How'd you do that?
cool. Literally on the floor, I think. No, we definitely did the fight up until falling. We fell onto the ground. And then kind of just skipped the falling for the time being, and then like overlapped like a landing and continued with the fight. And then I think the fall we did like side by side off of like a steel deck onto pads. Yeah, I think we actually did the fall bit. But we also mimed the fall bit a little bit. So like while we were doing the fight, we like fell onto the ground, mimed like falling for a while just to get some data from that, and then we also did the regular fall. So we covered it from a few different bases.
Those animators are amazing.
Yeah, it looks so good. I do think it helps that we actually did do some falling as well, but obviously it's much longer than like the volume would allow probably of a fall. So yeah, it looks so good. It's one of my favorite things.
So you did another. The third clip that we're going to talk about is from Call of Duty Modern Warfare 2019.
Oh yeah.
And you played. You played as a child character in the scene.
Yes.
Yes. Talk about that. There are two children in the scene. So there's the first person character, Farah, I think is what her name was, and then there's the boy as well.
I want to say we did it twice, and I was both of them or something. I was definitely the player character in some bits, and then the boy for sure in some of the other bits. I think where it's just her camera, we kind of picked up anything where her hands came into view, and then I was the boy for the most part of that. And then whenever she came in, I was her. It was interesting. There's also a bunch of, we did so many like fails of her. Like first person, she comes up and stabs or whatever with her screwdriver. And we did so many fails of like, oh, if she gets noticed early and they just smack her to the ground, or like they pick her up and then slam her to the ground, and it was all like trying to make sure that my hands were within view. But I can't find those anywhere, because I guess people even on YouTube don't like killing children and playing video games and being like, oh, what happens if the child dies?
That's good.
So I find like a compilation of all the fails, because that was like a very long few hours of like trying to make sure my hands are in the right spot and just getting slammed to the ground over and over again. But yeah, I couldn't find that, because also it was first person, so it wouldn't have shown too much anyway. But that was an interesting one. For the scene that I did send you, it was cool. It was very narrative driven. Obviously the subject matter is kind of serious and somber and sad, so to counter that, everyone just makes a bunch of jokes on set all day, because that's the only way you get through it, really. Because if you delve too deep into individuals killing children, and like there's so much with that game that's just like dark. That yeah, you don't want to go too far into that. Obviously I did the just the movement for it, so we had, you know, the map of it set up, and Modern Warfare does a good, I think did a good job of just like we set up doors so we can open them, and like, you know, everything's very specific to the geo. Like there's a scene where I don't think I sent you this, but like some people get loaded into a van or whatever, so we like they measure out exactly the steps and everything, so that part's really cool. Because you get a little more of a set than normal. Obviously it's still like PVC pipe door and apple box sets, so it's not like an actual truck or anything, but it is more of something to interact with than most video games and mocap gives you, so it's kind of cool. um
One of my favorite moments is when halfway through when Farah shoots the bad guy, she falls down.
yeah,
Was that in the script?
I think it it's so long ago.
See, like
um
those moments, because
it might,
as
yeah, I don't know. I'm saying like it might be, it might not be, because I don't know.
you know, as a father, when I see scenes like this, my first reaction is very visceral and
Mm.
kind of caged. But then I see
Mm-hmm.
moments like that, and it's almost like it brings a level of respect for the characters, where you're
Mm-hmm.
respecting the fact that these kids are in over their heads and they shouldn't be in this situation.
Yeah.
And so when you see the girl pick up the gun, aim, and they go and fall over, like that to me, it makes it easier to watch in a certain sense,
Mm.
because it's giving realism to what it would probably be like for a kid to be in warfare.
Yeah.
And it preserves the innocence of kids. And there's also the part where, you know, Farah gets picked up and she's kicking and screaming and grabbing the guy's
Yeah.
face and stuff like that. Things like that are like, they make sense. And when those things make sense, even though it's scary, there's a
Mm-hmm.
respect for the subject material that comes over, in
Yeah.
my opinion, it comes over very well.
Yeah, no, I agree, because it's not like she's just so, you know, whatever, shooting like a badass like Charlie's Angels or something. Like yeah,
No, like
like
I think that when they did that with that girl and was it Kick Ass? I
oh
can't, I
yeah,
know I'm not supposed to talk about this, but like anytime, not being specific to movies,
yeah,
anytime when they take a kid and they
mm-hmm.
sort of remove the innocence of the kid and they make the kid into a killer, sort of just ad
Yeah.
hoc. Um,
You're not, yeah, you're not honoring the character and where they come from. I think a similar thing happens when, unpopular opinion, when female superheroes turn into male superheroes in female bodies. Like not like, you know, like whatever, because they a lot of times it feels like the same exact characteristics that you would use with a male superhero
yeah.
or a male, you know, action hero get put onto a female without any thought of like, is there some sort of nuance that would make this character more realistic, more human, whatever, more individual, even like, because it's bad enough that things are kind of not stereotypical, but like similar in style and vibe and everything. Like you have kind of archetypal characters to begin with, and then you just put them on a different gender and
Yeah.
expect a similar result. And I think that's also why a lot of people get angry on the internet. Like it's not necessarily that they're misogynistic. Like some people totally they are, but I think a lot of people just get disappointed that it's kind of the same character, just a female. And like I get disappointed with that because it's like I want to see more nuance in stuff more often. And I think the same thing happens with kids, you know, if you just turn them into, like you were saying, like if you just turn them into like this random adult archetype of a superhero or an action hero, like it's not going to be as compelling as when you have that. And it takes so little. Like it takes the director and the actors just kind of being like, oh, there's kick on this gun, she'd fly back. Or oh, how would a little girl that's like fighting for her life, what she'd scratch at the face because her hands are there, and she'd be kicking as hard as she can. Like, yeah, I think it's just like that nuance and stuff. And I think video games do that so much better than some film and TV often. Like, because I don't know why. I feel
That's
like they
an
feel realism.
that's an interesting observation, because like I mean, this would be all speculation. In all of the games that I've worked on involving kids,
Hi, Rally.
there is a parent
Yeah,
somewhere in the process who understands this, or somebody who knows kids really well, you know.
yeah.
And I think that in general, when it comes to designing a character that's believable, even designing a villain
Mm-hmm.
who
Same
uh,
thing, even harder.
yeah, because if you don't have a good grasp on what true evil really is, like if you haven't had the
Yeah,
experience of being screwed over by somebody for years until you realize that you've been duped, or whatever it might be, then you might fall back on kind of schoolyard bullying,
yeah,
and your 35-year-old, like tough bad guy is going to be a schoolyard bully and just say crap that like nobody would say.
yeah,
Nobody ever said, like you're no longer a threat when you say
yeah,
just like racial slurs out there, and just nobody, very
yeah,
rarely does this actually happen within true evil. True evil is
yeah.
so pleasant and they're beautiful people when you first meet them,
Oh yeah,
and
absolutely.
they're attractive, and they're very, they're wealthy, or
Hmm.
maybe they're not, maybe they're just very modest, and they play a game, and they're very
Yeah,
psychological. And I don't know, maybe
yeah,
sometimes people, I'm just going on a rant right now, but maybe the people writing this, like maybe they maybe they're the bad guy and they don't want to write that guy so they write like the schoolyard bully instead. I don't know. I just it takes like, so it's the same thing with kids, being able
yeah.
to understand the reality, like you said, of a machine gun, instead of falling back on a trope.
Hmm. Yeah, absolutely. And I mean, what you were saying earlier with like writing the schoolyard bully, obviously there's like a hesitancy to go that far, right? To go that far into realism. Like, we even talked about it several times, I think, on Modern Warfare. We're like, wow, like, we're killing children here. Like, there's a lot of stuff going here. We're kidnapping them, we're doing this. Like, we are going as far as we can to portray the art and the story, and kind of um in a realistic sense, so that people understand the situation, and like how serious and how important it is. And obviously, like, this sort of thing does happen in the world, but in media we tend to kind of shy away from it in a way, because we don't want to face it. We don't want to be the person that is bringing that forward, and risking glorifying it, because that's obviously a
Yeah.
point of contention sometimes, is like how much is like a cautionary tale versus the glorification of certain things
Yeah.
within action specific,
Yeah.
which is something I wonder about, all the time. You're like, oh, how what are we doing?
Yeah.
Yeah,
I mean, I think we had conversations like that on Mortal Kombat 11. Um,
yeah, sure.
we
Yeah,
were on many of the
it,
same
it
shoots together.
yeah. I was gonna say it helps when it's fantasy, but yeah, like when you're ripping heads off people, like you're ripping heads off people.
Yeah.
It's not. Yeah.
I mean, they've definitely gotten over the hurdle that they were stuck in, like in '95 or so, when the game was very fresh, and
Mm.
um, there was this big question of whether or not whether or not it was appropriate for children to be ripping heads off of people.
Probably
Uh,
not.
yeah, look what happened, you know. Uh, but uh, but at the same time, I think that over time, there's this sort of there's an element of good and evil in that game series,
Mhm.
where I mean, it's not like GI Joe level cheese. You do see like there are good guys and there are bad guys in that game, and so
Yeah.
there's there's an angle to it where it's not just that stuff. I don't know. I'm defending Mortal Kombat. Maybe it's maybe I don't need to do that, you know.
No, but I think you're right. Like, I think every generation has its own things that it's concerned about. Like, I read a couple articles about contemporary art and like a lot of movies. Um, Again, maybe glorifying the villain by explaining explaining their story. Like, there's so many shows and movies that are like, oh, here's the backstory of this villain that we thought was black and white, but actually had it hard growing up, and this is how they are now. And it's like, I don't think bringing nuance into something or bringing realism into something is ever bad.
Is that a
You know?
controversy?
Sorry.
Is that actually a controversy? Giving nuance to enemies?
No, not well. Yeah, like I know there's like a lot of like YouTube video essays or like essays in general that are like, oh, now we're glorifying now we're glorifying or explaining why people are bad, and like, can't we just leave them as being bad?
Right.
I don't know if it's a big controversy, but I did see it quite a bit. Is like,
Right.
oh, like, like, are we defending them because we're explaining their actions, or
Right.
are we defending their actions because we're explaining how they got to
Yeah.
them?
Yeah.
And I feel like, I mean, maybe for a certain age of child, it's too much nuance. But I think it's better than just having this person's evil because they're evil. Like they're twiddling their
Right.
mustache is what I'm here. Obviously, if you can't.
I don't know what this mustache hate is about, but I don't like it.
It's the straight one that goes really far and you pull it and then it goes doing.
Yeah.
Like the cartoon villain.
Martial arts film freak is asking, what was the sense of camaraderie like working on a game like Mortal Kombat? And I assume he means with the stunt team, but there's also camaraderie between us and the devs.
Yeah, absolutely. Mortal Kombat's one of the, yeah, definitely it's good. It was very fun to get to work on that one. We worked on the 11 together in Chicago, and then we worked on, is it 12 or 1,
It's
or are
called
they
Mortal
different?
Kombat 1, yeah.
It's called Mortal Kombat 1. And then we worked on one together, with Super Alloy. And then they also did shoots in Chicago as well. I think it's cool for that one specifically because the team was fairly consistent for both of the games. Like, I think we had a lot of the same people. So it's kind of nice to revisit everyone. And then working with the devs is always awesome. It's very rare, I think, that I find animators and devs I don't get along with too much, like on a personal level as well as on a like professional, like, just as friends and like hanging out and like, joking around on set and stuff. And I think it's really it's important to the art as well to like get along with everyone and be on the same page and be able to communicate about the vision. Yeah, it was a good, I don't know, it was good. It was good camaraderie. We all had good lunches together and hung out and then went back to work.
Yeah. I mean, on mocap
It's a tough
games,
question.
yeah, well, I remember that whenever I was called to do Mortal Kombat 11, I never knew who the other performers were going to be. So I just knew I was
Sure.
going there, and I didn't know
Yeah.
if it was just going to be me or if it's going to be me and 8 people,
Yeah, they
or
never tell
there'd be six of
them.
us. That'd be the
Yeah.
top.
Yeah.
And
But it was usually the same six,
yeah,
I think, and that was kind of nice.
yeah, it was a mix of LA folks, Chicago folks, and me,
Mhm.
and there's just this like what I think was kind of special about that team was that I think all of us kind of came from the indie world to some extent,
Mm-hmm.
at least
In
like
martial arts.
in
Yeah.
martial arts. Nobody was just like the mesh was easy between the West Coast and the East Coast teams. It was an easy mesh because
Yeah.
the Chicago locals were they have like martial arts school backgrounds and they do stunts in Chicago. It's a very different culture, and
Mm-hmm.
but I think that there was a very common language that we shared just around martial arts and just kind of nerding out about Hong Kong films and all
Yeah.
that. So
Yeah, I agree. It was easy. It was
that
an
stuff
easy,
really
yeah.
helped.
Yeah, it was very effortless. It was very just like, oh yeah, we're all here to do this thing. And it was, yeah, it was I always enjoyed both going and also, to Chicago and
Let's go into your indie work. We're way over time.
yeah.
How are you on time? Are you all right?
I'm fine. I don't have to be anywhere until 7,
Okay.
but obviously.
All right. So we got two
Wait.
hours and 15 minutes. Good.
Let's
Um,
go.
the other clip that you sent over was parking spot, and you worked on
Yeah.
this with Alfred Singh.
Yes.
Talk about this project.
It's super fun. It's a little short that Robert Stronger, who did he's done some stuff with Bat in the Sun Productions. I think he like worked with them in a different capacity, but he was directing this one. And it's really fun. It like I know he's kind of trying to keep it more like proprietary and just like not reveal too much about it, but it's an action comedy. And I really like the timing of everything because it goes back and forth between like current situation, like obviously I can't find a parking spot trying to go to this concert, and then uh the other person I'm fighting, Alfred, like steals my parking spot. But it goes back and forth between like our interaction and then these flashbacks of like my character's grandma trying to tell her to stop being so like angry all the time, and then Alfred's like yakuza friends just like saying funny things. And it like the cuts together are so funny at the perfect time, like the comedic timing's really fun. We got to play with a lot of like Hong Kongy style movement. We shot it in one night in a parking garage. So like obviously we didn't have like the most amount of time, but it was a really fun shoot. I always love the opportunity to get to, do moves in a dress. And I the shoes were my choice. They were little platform
I was gonna ask
boots.
who made the bright decision of putting you in platform.
I was like, I haven't done a fight, like a full like fight with heels of much of a sort, because usually wardrobe on set are pretty good to me. And they're usually pretty cool about like not having to do crazy stuff. So I was like, hey, you know what, we should try it. And I didn't want to go like full like heel stiletto because it's a lot of action and stuff, so the the platform boot um was really fun. And they actually have a little moment in the scene as well. Grandma's like, don't wear these, and then she wears them to the concert. So it's just really fun. And I think there's a lot of little like Hong Kong style things we got to play with. It's actually doing really well. It's won a few like comedy action film festival things so far, so it's pretty fun. um yeah, it was a good group of people. I think it's cool to do smaller projects like that and indie stuff because you get to have like a more cohesive vision. One, because there's less cooks in the kitchen, and then two, you just get more involved in the project from a creative standpoint as well. Like Alfred was the fight choreographer and stunt coordinator on it, but like obviously we collabed in making everything. And it's always fun to just be that close to the director and just be like, oh, what about this? And he's like, yeah or no. Like whereas with bigger stuff, there's so many layers that you have to peel back to get anywhere. So it's really fun. It was a good little shoot. I'll be posting on my Instagram if it goes anywhere else to festivals or anything, if anyone wants to see it or whatever. But it was a fun one.
Is the goal to go to a longer format with the film?
I don't know. I should have asked that. I'm not sure. I think it might have just been a short, but there's always the option for that, or just to have other projects. I think the director just really likes martial arts action movies and action comedy and stuff, and I think he wants to do a lot more of it. So either this one longer form, or if it's something else that ends up being a thing. Yeah.
What's it like
I'm
making
just
an indie action film in LA? I assume you shot it in LA.
Yeah, we did. Well, we got kicked out of the first garage. Uh,
Those garages, man.
um,
Like, why can't we shoot here? It's always a problem. The
I
the
think
lighting is
they.
so good.
I know, I know. It turned out for the best because the other one is actually like ended up being even better and like there was a view and stuff. But I don't. I think there was like a miscommunication with the first garage because I don't even I don't know, but we got kicked out of the first garage. And I don't think we were trying to shoot at Gorilla. Like I think he paid the garage like a fee to be there. Gorilla being like, just no permit or whatever. And obviously since parking garages are per like individually owned, like you could just pay them. It's not like shooting on a public street or anything. That said, if you do want to shoot Gorilla stuff, like I did one film forever ago as well that was like actually gorilla and we were like just running from location to location. I think in LA it's so much harder because no one's enamored with a camera. Everyone's kind of just over it because everyone films things here and it's harder to get that past people. You can't just be like, "Oh no, we're just taking pictures or whatever." Like it's a student film like that all the I feel like those are all the like regular answers that you give people to like get them off your back, but I think here people kind of just see through it, so it's harder. Um yeah, but other than that, you know, same.
Yeah, it's getting hard everywhere, I'm
Mhm.
sure, to shoot
Yeah,
indie films. Yeah, everybody kind of is savvy at this point. Um,
yeah,
but
and there's so many YouTubers too, right? That like just shoot like a bunch of like reaction stuff where they're filming live real people and like they're trying to get that around and stuff for their like prank videos or for whatever. So I think people are just very distrustful in general.
so what are you looking to do um, in the indie world? Do you want to push more into performance? What kind of performance, or are you looking to do more on the directing side? What's your long-term goal?
Um,
And
long
there's the
term,
answer.
long term, I don't know. In the next few years, term, I've been doing a little more like fight choreography, stunt coordinating. It's all very simple stunt coordinating, but I've done a few of those in the last year or so. Mostly like actor action. I did one where we had doubles, and it's like all indie stuff. I'm there for a few days on a feature or whatever, and I'm doing like just being better at stunt coordinating, being better at fight choreography. I do want to do more with fight choreography. Um, but I also just I really enjoy performing the action as well as the acting. So I'm trying to do that's kind of why I'm doing more of the indie stuff as well. Like it's a good reason to go into indie because it's like it gives you a little more ability to dictate what you get to do because obviously on bigger projects I'm usually a double or I'm doing the action or that's pretty much it. So with an indie thing I can either do the fight choreography and perform it or I can be the character in its entirety and I think that's really fun. Because I think there's something cool about not being able to or not having to switch out doubles when you're doing action. I think just being able to have like the stunt person do both and obviously like that's been a issue for a long time with bigger projects just trying to always have actors that don't do action very well because they believe that stunt people can't act, which in some cases is very true, and in others is not true. So obviously I understand the hesitation, but yeah, it's very fun. I like both acting and action, and then just acting separately as well. So I'm trying to do more of that while at the same time doing more coordinating. Um, and
Cool.
then
I like that
yeah,
you're doing comedy.
it's hard, especially physical comedy. Like it's its own thing. I feel like for fights specifically, like doing drama is much easier fights wise
Hmm.
than comedy. But I don't know. I might just be saying that because that's what people say.
Yeah, I think
But it, yeah,
when you do action comedy,
I
you
mean,
have
you're
you have
freaking great with that comedy. Like,
well, thanks. It might be why I just don't do much of anything anymore because it's hard. It takes it out of you because you have to set up everything. And
Hmm.
a failed joke is like the death to the entire project.
Yeah,
So like
that's true.
as you're designing everything, right? And maybe I'm just I don't know, maybe I'm too hard on myself, but the way I
Probably,
see
but
it is like everything that's in there, it's like it all has to be a setup because
hmm
you're trying to guide people. Um and that's just, it's a huge task. You'll learn whether or not you're funny pretty quickly. You'll learn really quick if you're not funny because you'll be sitting in the audience, and your favorite joke is coming up, and you're waiting, and you're like, okay, they're gonna love this joke, and you do the joke, and you turn around, and it's just crickets, you know. And you think back, okay, what was I thinking when I did that, right? Like, did the editor screw
yeah,
it up? Was it the camera? Was it my performance? So there's all these
and
like,
it could be all of it, yeah,
could
or
be all of it.
any,
Could be all
yeah,
of it. Maybe a small edit will fix that.
yeah, like a cutaway to a goat or whatever.
So,
Which,
exactly, yeah, you just don't know. And so even as a
yeah,
performer, you might have hit all the marks.
hmm
You might have done everything perfect. It's just
yeah,
somebody got a hold of the footage and thought, "Oh, I'll put a little musical cue here to tell everybody that there's a joke or something." Or I'll
hmm
cut to people laughing at what you just said,
yeah.
and then it's one of my pet peeves. So, um,
Yeah, it's like you have to be so intentional with the timing and you kind of can't leave it to anyone else. Like you have to know exactly because I was I watched Dennis Rule. He was working on a little comedy bit too. And like watching him, I'm sure it's a very similar thing as watching you, like watching him like go through it and be like, does it need that extra like second
yeah,
of a hold on her face, or do we cut that out? Or do we, like it's such detailed work of like getting the timing just right. But when it works, it's like, amazing,
yeah,
but it's definitely hard. And also jokes in general, like you can have a joke that's hilarious in the moment and like situationally it's perfect and the timing's great and it's so funny, and then you try to write it or put it into something and it's like there's no way to make that work
yeah,
every time. Like it's
yeah.
it's weird.
I mean, there's some jokes that play great when you're with one person,
Hmm.
and you can kind of have a banter, and there'll be a great joke there. But then when it comes to, trying to make everybody laugh, um, without the right
Hmm.
setup, without the context,
Yeah,
you have to start from zero almost every time, you know.
yeah,
So anyway,
exactly.
I'm excited to see the short. Please let us
Yeah,
know when it's out so we can see it.
I will absolutely. I know I honestly don't know because I know it's trying to do all the film festival things and you don't want to like release it until it's done with that, but I don't know where or when it will be. But we do have that little clip, so we can definitely play that or
I'll put a link in
attach
the
it.
description so everybody can see,
Exactly. Perfection.
and then I'll put a link to all the other clips that we talked about.
Yeah. I feel like
Um,
YouTube should have that. Just like linking stuff. There's no way.
no, it should be fun. Thekla, thank you so much. It's been awesome talking to you again. It's been fun catching up. I'm excited about your career. I can't wait to see what happens with this short. And I know you're funny. So,
We'll keep working on portraying that on screen.
yeah, I think that, you know, like be bold with doing that
Yeah.
and
Yeah, for
just try
sure.
stuff, and I know you can do it. So I'm excited to see the short.
Thank you. Thank you for the conversation. It's been awesome catching up with you too. And always looking forward to, you know, talking with you and working with you. It's always a blast.
Yeah. All right. Thanks again. See everybody. Thanks for joining the chat.
Thank you everyone. Appreciate the questions.